I'm going to ask you one last time, Sophia. Who are you, really? Sophia lifted her chin, her silence a defiant challenge. I am your housekeeper, sir, she replied, her voice crisp. If that will be all, I will take my leave. Without waiting for a reply, she turned on her heel and walked away. Marcus stood frozen, watching her retreat. The woman living in his house was a liar, and he was going to find out the truth. Back inside the cold expanse of his mansion, he got straight to the point the moment David, his assistant, answered. What did you find on Sophia's background? It's squeaky clean. Marcus, you're being paranoid. She's worked for you for 8 months without a single issue. David's voice came over the line. Jennifer had a clean record too, and she made off with my grandmother's entire jewelry collection, Marcus retorted and slammed the phone down. He sat before the bank of security monitors, his mind elsewhere. He turned to his computer, pulling up Sophia's employee file. On the surface, everything was perfect. Sophia Morales, 29, impeccable references, a valid social security number. But Marcus didn't trust surfaces. He pulled up an audio file. The recording was from the kitchen security camera, time-stamped yesterday. She'd been speaking rapid-fire Spanish, thinking he wouldn't understand. But he'd caught the keywords madre, mother, deuda, debt, and one phrase on a loop, más dinero, more money. Next, the wire transfer receipt. He'd seen it fall from her coat pocket a few days ago. A $500 transaction to an address in Honduras. When he'd asked about it, she had stammered something about family and quickly changed the subject. Marcus scrubbed back through the security footage from the week before. He found it, Sophia, on her lunch break, spending nearly 20 minutes scrolling through high-end jewelry websites on her phone. Diamond earrings, bracelets worth more than 6 months of her salary. In his mind, the pieces began to click into place, forming a terrifyingly familiar pattern. It always started small, hushed phone calls, lies about leaving early. Then came the bigger plays, missing items, drained bank accounts. Just then, his phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Sir, I'll be late tonight. Marcus set his drink down. A blatant lie. Working late. Where? He snatched his keys and headed for the garage. His black Mercedes melted seamlessly into the Seattle traffic. Sophia took the bus. He'd followed her route before, just to make sure she got home safe. But tonight, he was going to find out where she really went after hours. The bus pulled up at Pioneer Square. Sophia stepped off, lugging several oversized shopping bags. Marcus killed the engine, parking across the street to watch. She headed for an old brick building, its facade bearing faded Spanish letters. It looked exactly like the kind of place he'd pictured for a shady transaction. This is it, he thought. Marcus slipped across the street, melting into a shadowed doorway to peer through the large storefront window. The scene inside stopped him cold. There was no deal. Instead, he saw Sophia being embraced by an elderly woman. On the wall, a simple wooden sign, Esperanza Community Center. Sophia stood before a classroom of about 20 seniors. Her voice carried, not in the hushed tones he'd heard on the phone, but with a warmth and patience that filled the room. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to practice ordering from a restaurant menu. Marcus stood motionless. She was teaching. For the next hour, he just watched. He saw her kneel beside an old man, gently correcting his pronunciation. He saw her place a hand on the shoulder of a frustrated woman, murmuring encouragement in Spanish. She smiled more in that single hour than she had in the entire 8 months she'd worked for him. The class ended. Sophia opened the suspicious shopping bags. Inside wasn't money or contraband. It was bread, cold cuts, and fruit. She started making sandwiches, handing them out to each person as she chatted and laughed with them. Marcus stepped back into the shadows, his mind reeling. The phone calls, the $500, the lie about working late, it all led here. Not to a conspiracy, but to an act of kindness. A pang of shame hit him. He had judged her so completely, so wrongly. He turned, ready to drive home in his own confusion. But then, something shifted. Sophia's radiant expression vanished. She scanned the room, ensuring no one was watching, then slipped quietly to a corner obscured by a bookshelf. A man was already waiting there. He wore a frayed coat, his face was gaunt, and his eyes darted around like a cornered animal. Marcus held his breath, his eyes glued to the scene. Their exchange was brief and tense. He couldn't hear their words, but he saw the urgency in every gesture. And then it happened. Sophia quickly pulled a small, tightly wrapped package from her coat pocket. It was bound in an old cloth, looking profoundly out of place. She pressed it into the man's hand. He shoved it deep into his inner pocket, gave a curt nod, and slipped out the back door, disappearing into the night. Sophia stood alone for a moment. She closed her eyes, letting out a long, heavy sigh. The gentle face of the teacher was gone, replaced by the weary, anxious look of someone carrying a dangerous secret. Marcus stood rooted to the spot, his thoughts grinding to a halt. He looked back through the window. Sophia had rejoined her students, the warm smile back on her face as if nothing had happened. The two images, the devoted teacher and the woman in the shadows with the secret package, collided in his mind, refusing to reconcile. He sank deeper into the darkness, whispering to himself, "That package. What was in it? Money? Drugs? Something else? Sophia, who the hell are you?" His earlier confusion was gone, replaced by something far deeper. The puzzle of Sophia wasn't solved. It had just become infinitely more complex and more dangerous. He knew watching from the shadows would only create more questions. There was only one path to the truth. He started the car, not pointing it toward home, but straight toward a confrontation. Marcus circled the block, finding a discreet parking spot near the community center's exit. He was done watching from a distance. He would confront her. He would wait for her, ask the question point blank, and search her eyes for the truth. Tonight, this charade had to end. A few minutes later, Sophia stepped out. She pulled her coat collar tight and, on instinct, shot a quick glance down both ends of the alley. That single, wary glance was all the confirmation Marcus needed. He slammed the car door, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the quiet street. Before Sophia could react, he stepped from the shadows, blocking her path. His face was a cold, emotionless mask. "Stop right there, Sophia. The charade is over." Sophia flinched, taking a step back. The exhaustion on her face instantly hardened into a mask of pure defiance. "What are you talking about? Were you following me?" Marcus let out a short, bitter laugh. "Following? I'm simply connecting the dots you've been leaving everywhere. A community center as a front, secret meetings in dark corners, suspicious packages changing hands, all that talk about family, the trip. Did you think I wouldn't hear?" He advanced on her, backing her deeper into the shadows. "I'm so tired of people like you. You build this perfect cover of kindness, all to hide the filthy work you do underneath. Now, tell me, what was in the package? Drugs, weapons, cash from a score? That's none of your business. Get out of my way," she shot back, her voice trembling with fury, not fear. "Oh, it is," he said, his voice dangerously low. "It becomes my business when I decide to call the cops. Whatever little organization you're running, it ends tonight." At the word cops, Sophia's composure finally shattered. She let out a desperate cry and lunged, not to attack him, but to snatch the phone from his hand. "Please, Marcus, you can't." He held the phone out of her reach, momentarily surprised by her violent reaction, but his voice remained cold. "Give me one good reason why I shouldn't." Sophia took a ragged breath. The alley fell silent. Finally, she spoke, her voice no longer defiant, but stripped bare. "The package. It's not what you think. It's not drugs. It's not dirty money." She hesitated, then her voice became clear. "It's paper," she said. Passports, ID cards, all of them fake. Marcus's brow furrowed in confusion. Fake papers? So this is a smuggling ring, conning desperate refugees. That's even worse than drugs. Sophia shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. It's a lifeline, she whispered. The family, you heard. It's a real family. A father, a mother, and their 7-year-old daughter, running from people who would kill them without a second thought. Those papers are that little girl's only chance to live. If you call the cops, they'll be sent back. And they will die. Do you understand? Her question hung in the air between them, demanding more than an answer. It demanded a choice. And Marcus knew, in that instant, that his answer would redefine who he was from that moment on. The next morning, Marcus sat in the kitchen with his coffee, watching Sophia work. She moved with her usual quiet efficiency, but there was a new lightness about her. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She answered, her voice professional. Hello, this is Sophia. Marcus kept his eyes on his newspaper, but his ears were tuned in. He saw her shoulders tense. What? Wait, are you sure? Sophia's voice shifted from professional to incredulous. Then it cracked. 50,000? Oh my God, are you serious? She began pacing the kitchen, one hand covering her mouth, her eyes welling up. She could barely form a coherent sentence into the phone. Yes, I understand. I'll tell everyone. Thank you, Maria. Thank you. She hung up but remained frozen for a few seconds, staring into space as if she couldn't believe it. Finally, she turned to Marcus, her eyes shining with an extraordinary light. Mr. Wellington, she said, her voice still trembling with emotion, the center. Someone just made a donation. $50,000. We're saved. The joy finally spilled over. She didn't jump up and down, but her smile was so radiant, it lit up the entire room. We can fix the heating, buy new textbooks. We might even be able to start a computer class. Maria was sobbing on the phone when she told me. Marcus looked up, hiding a faint smile behind his coffee cup. He kept his voice neutral. A lucky day for the center, then. Yes, she exclaimed, the excitement still bubbling. But who would do that? Can you think of anyone? They didn't say? Marcus asked, feigning curiosity. No, completely anonymous. Maria said they only left a short note, that they believe in the mission. Sophia said the words with a reverence and gratitude so profound, it was as if they were the most precious things in the world. Watching her pure, unadulterated joy, Marcus felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest. He realized this wasn't the satisfaction of closing a business deal. This was something else entirely, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Sophia gazed out the window, still lost in the moment. I just wish I knew who it was, she whispered, so I could thank them. In the days that followed, Sophia was constantly buried in her thesis. One January morning, Marcus walked into the kitchen to find her sitting amidst a mountain of books and papers. She looked up, slightly flustered. My apologies, Mr. Wellington. I came in early to prepare for my thesis meeting this afternoon. Your thesis? Marcus poured a coffee, his curiosity overriding his surprise. What's it on? Instantly, Sophia's face lit up, the fatigue vanishing, replaced by a raw, intellectual passion. It's on the barriers to social mobility in immigrant communities, specifically how access to language, vocational training, and community support can break the cycle of poverty. Instead of leaving, Marcus pulled out a chair and sat across from her. So, what have you found? For nearly an hour, he just listened. Sophia explained her research with an intelligence and fire that completely captivated him. She didn't just talk about statistics, she talked about people, families working 2, 3 jobs and still struggling, the dignity of individuals who just need one shot to prove themselves. Most people don't see that, she said, a hint of sadness in her voice. They see someone cleaning their house and assume that's all they're capable of. But Carlos, at the center, He was an engineer in El Salvador. Isabella used to own her own bakery. They're brilliant, talented people, forced into menial jobs simply because their credentials aren't recognized here. Marcus's mind flashed back to a conversation they'd had one November afternoon as she was arranging flowers in his dining room. "You don't have family, sir?" she had asked. "My parents died when I was 22, he'd replied. "Car accident." Her hands, busy with the flowers, had stilled. "I'm so sorry. That must have been terrible." "It was, but it taught me to be self-reliant. Maybe too self-reliant," he admitted. "Family isn't just about blood. At the center, we're all family," Sophia had said softly. "Mrs. Chen brings soup for everyone. Mr. Rodriguez fixes things without being asked. We look out for each other." Now, hearing her talk about Carlos and Isabella, he finally understood what she meant. Those names weren't just data points in her research. They were the family she had spoken of. A fresh wave of shame washed over him as he remembered his own snap judgments about her. "I want to change that," Sophia continued, her eyes filled with determination. "I want to create programs that can validate their skills, help them build careers on what they already have, instead of forcing them to start from scratch." Marcus looked at her, genuinely impressed. That's incredible work, Sophia." She blushed slightly at the unexpected praise, quickly deflecting. "It's just research. It probably won't change much." "Don't say that," Marcus replied, his voice sincere. "You've already changed everything at the center." Their eyes met across the kitchen table. In that moment, there was no employer and housekeeper, just two people seeing something deeper in each other. Flustered, Sophia was the first to look away. I should get to my work," she said, hastily gathering her papers, but the air in the room had already shifted. A week passed. The comfortable warmth between Marcus and Sophia vanished, replaced by an unspoken distance. On Thursday night, the day before Sophia's last official day, she stayed late to organize the final set of files. Marcus walked into the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee and found her there, quietly wiping away tears. "What's wrong?" Hearing his voice, she quickly dried her eyes. "Nothing. I'm just tired." "It's silly," she said. "I'm leaving to chase my dream, which is what I want. But I'm going to miss this place, miss our conversations, miss the feeling of someone actually being interested in my work." Marcus placed a cup in front of her and sat down across from her. Someone was always interested, Sophia, and always will be. Their eyes met. For a moment, Marcus wanted to say it all, how she had completely changed his worldview, how he had fallen for her kindness, her intelligence, and her passion. But instead, he asked something else. "That man you mentioned, the one you said you could never have, did you ever tell him how you feel?" Sophia shook her head. "What would be the point? We're from different worlds. He'd never see me as more than," she gestured helplessly, "more than what I am. A housekeeper who came from nothing." "You're not nothing, Sophia. You're extraordinary." She gave a sad smile. "That's kind of you to say, sir." Friday arrived all too soon. Sophia finished her final tasks and packed her things. Marcus had an envelope ready with her last paycheck and a substantial bonus enough to cover her mother's medical expenses for a year. "This is far too much," Sophia said, her breath hitching as she stared at the check. "You were invaluable to me. Consider it a graduation gift." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. "I don't know what to say. Just say you'll stay in touch. Let me know how you're doing." "Of course." They stood in the entryway, neither wanting to say the final goodbye. Finally, Sophia stepped forward and gave him a quick, impulsive hug. "Thank you for everything, Mr. Wellington. You were more than an employer, you were a friend. Take care of yourself, Sophia." After she was gone, Marcus walked through the house. Everything was spotless, perfectly organized, and utterly empty. He had returned to his fortress, only to find the walls now felt like a prison. 3 months later, on his gleaming ebony desk sat a cream-colored invitation. The elegant script read, The annual fundraising gala for the Esperanza Community Center. Sophia would be there. The invitation mentioned she'd be receiving an award for her volunteer contributions. Though his better judgment told him not to, Marcus RSVP'd yes. He told himself he just wanted to witness her success, to see her happy from a distance. But as the day drew closer, Marcus realized he was hoping for something more, a chance to see if the connection they'd shared was real or just something he'd imagined. At the gala, the community center had been transformed, filled with lights, music, and laughter. Marcus felt out of place in his expensive suit until he saw her. Sophia stood in the middle of a crowd, radiant in a deep blue gown. She was no longer the quiet housekeeper from his home. Here, in her world, she was confident and vibrant. As she took the stage to a wave of heartfelt applause, Marcus felt a warm pride swell in his chest. Afterward, he summoned his courage and approached her. "Sophia." She turned, and surprise flickered in her eyes. "Mr. Wellington, I didn't think you'd come. I couldn't miss seeing you honored," he said, his voice sincere. "Congratulations, you deserve it." "Thank you," she smiled, but there was still a hint of distance between them. "It's all thanks to our anonymous donor. Without them, none of this would have been possible." This was it, his chance. "Sophia, I have to confess something," he said, his voice lowering. "The anonymous donor, that was me." Sophia froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. It was you," she stammered. "But why? Why would you?" "Because I believe in what you're doing," he said, looking directly into her eyes. "Because you showed me a different world, one of kindness and sacrifice that I had forgotten existed. You changed me, Sophia." The gratitude in her eyes slowly morphed into something else. Something more complex, a mix of confusion and a flicker of pain. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You did all of this, but you let me go." "Because I thought it's what you wanted," he admitted. "You said you were in love with someone you could never have. I assumed it was someone here, someone more worthy of you than I am." Sophia stared at him, and tears began to well in her eyes. But this time, they weren't tears of anger, but of a truth that had been held back for too long. "The man I could never have, the one I told you about," her voice broke. "The one I thought was from another world, the one I had to run away from my own feelings for." She took a shaky breath, her gaze locked on his. "It was you, Marcus." The entire room seemed to melt away. The music, the chatter, it all fell silent. All that remained was her confession, suspended in the air between them. "I thought we could never happen," she whispered. "That in your eyes, I would always just be the housekeeper. That you could never see me as anything more." Marcus stepped closer, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. "I've always seen you as more, Sophia," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "From the day I saw you teaching here. I just wasn't brave enough to admit it, even to myself." And in that moment, amidst the warmth of the gala, two seemingly different worlds finally found their point of intersection, not through money or status, but through a simple truth they had both tried so desperately to deny. 1 year later, the Esperanza Community Center had never looked more beautiful. White roses and baby's breath adorned every surface, and string lights formed a canopy of stars over the main hall. Sophia stood at the back of the room in her grandmother's wedding dress, watching the space that had changed her life transform into the backdrop for her new beginning. As the laughter of the wedding reception subsided, Sophia found her way back to where it all began, the familiar door of the English classroom. But now, a gleaming brass plaque was affixed to the wood, the Sophia Morales Wellington Learning Center, where every voice is valued. The name, a fusion of two people, two worlds, was a testament to the wedding that had just taken place and the promise of the charitable foundation to come. "Any regrets?" Marcus's deep, warm voice sounded as he wrapped his arms around her from behind. Sophia smiled, leaning back against his chest, feeling a sense of complete peace. "Just one," she whispered. "What's that?" "That it took us so long to realize we were always meant to be partners. Marcus kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair and the faint aroma of Mrs. Isabella's cooking that seemed to have permanently woven itself into their lives. We found each other when we were ready. That's what matters. And in that moment, between their beginning and a wide-open future, they had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that you should never trust what you see on the surface, because kindness and true love, the kind that often hides behind a simple exterior, is the real power that can dissolve any misunderstanding and mend two separate souls into one.